All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about a skill that we all think we've got on lock, but honestly, it's kind of disappearing. We're talking about the lost art of listening. Now, let's just dive right in, because pretty much everything in modern life has trained us to do the exact opposite. We're taught to project, right? To lead the conversation, to shape the narrative, to get our point across. But what if the real power, the real connection, isn't in what we say, but in what we're willing to hear?
And to really get what true listening feels like, listen to this. The author here was interviewing the brilliant neurologist Oliver Sacks. And to get a quiet recording, they had to cram into a bedroom closet. So there she is, sitting in the dark, but as he talks, the world just opens up. She talks about these flashes of insight, creativity, and empathy. I mean, that's not a chore, right? That's a kind of magic. And it's a magic that, for a lot of us, is getting harder and harder to find.
So here's the core of the problem. Our whole lives were essentially trained for what you could call conversational grandstanding. Everything tells us to project our ideas, lead the chat, and always stay on message. But what about the other side of that coin? You know, the skills like absorbing what someone else is saying, following where they want to go, and really listening with the intent to understand. We don't really get taught that, do we? It's like we've all been training for the debate team when what we actually need is a class on how to connect.
And you know what? Our world has literally been redesigned to stop us from connecting. I love this quote from the writer Eudora Welty. She basically said the South had so many great writers because, well, people just sat on the front porches and talked. That was it. But today, we've swapped those front porches for front-facing garages that just kind of swallow us up at the end of the day. We've replaced those slow, rambling talks with a constant fire hose of texts and posts and notifications.
And this isn't just some personal bummer. The collective price we're paying for not listening, it's huge. It has created what experts are now calling a full-blown public health crisis, a global epidemic of loneliness.
And when you look at the data, it is genuinely shocking. Feeling isolated and disconnected actually increases your risk of dying early, as much as being obese and being an alcoholic combined. Just think about that. We pour billions of dollars into fighting those things, but this silent killer, loneliness, it barely gets a fraction of the attention.
To put an even finer point on it, the damage loneliness does to your health is worse than smoking 14 cigarettes a day. Let that sink in. 14. This isn't just about feeling sad. It's a real physical threat. It's directly linked to higher rates of heart disease, stroke, and even dementia.
So who's the loneliest? Well, the answer might actually surprise you. It's Gen Z, the first generation to grow up completely surrounded by screens. They are, without a doubt, the most digitally connected generation in all of human history. And yet, they report the absolute highest levels of loneliness. The data makes it pretty clear. The more time you spend staring at a screen, the more likely you are to feel unhappy and isolated.
But, okay, it's not all doom and gloom. Because here's where it gets really, really cool. Scientists are now figuring out the incredible things that happen inside our brains when we actually connect with someone. And this isn't just a feeling. It's a real, measurable, biological event. It's a phenomenon called neural coupling. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. It is the literal, real-time syncing up of a listener's brain with a speaker's brain. So when you really get what someone is saying, you're not just processing words, your brains are actually starting to fire in the same patterns. It's a mind melt. For real.
And I'm not being poetic here. This is not a metaphor.
So at Princeton, they did this study with an fMRI machine. They had one person tell a story, and they watched their brain activity. Then they had another person just listen to that story. And as they listened, the listener's brain patterns began to physically mirror the speaker's. It's visible scientific proof that we're transmitting thoughts and emotions. By listening, you are literally getting on someone else's wavelength.
Okay, so we get it. The problem's huge, the science is fascinating, but what do we do about it? How do we actually fix this? Well, the good news is there are some really practical, powerful things we can all start doing to become better listeners.
And look, it really just boils down to 3 key ideas. First, you've got to listen with genuine curiosity. Second, you need to master something called the support response. And third, you have to learn to get comfortable with and even embrace the power of silence. Let's break them down.
First up, curiosity. And if you think that's some kind of soft, fuzzy skill, get this. This quote is from a former CIA chief interrogator, and what he found was that the whole tough guy interrogation thing, it almost never worked. You know what did? Building a real rapport by being genuinely curious about the other person.
He said his best tactic was to just ask suspects to tell him their life story, and then he'd just shut up and listen. Okay, this next one is a total game changer. A sociologist named Charles Derber figured out that we basically have two ways of responding in a conversation. The most common is the shift response. That's where you hijack the conversation to make it about you. You know the type. Your friend says, "Man, my boss is driving me crazy," and your brain immediately goes, "Oh, you think that's bad? Let me tell you about my boss." The much better way is the support response. It keeps the spotlight on them. You ask questions that help them go deep. And there's this amazing old story that just perfectly nails this idea. You had these two rival British prime ministers, Gladstone and Disraeli. Now, Gladstone was a shifter. He talked to impress you. So after dinner with him, people would leave thinking, wow, he is the smartest man in England. But his rival, Disraeli, was a master of the support response. And after dinner with him, people would leave thinking, wow, I am the smartest person in England. See the difference? That's the power of making someone feel truly heard.
And finally, let's talk about silence. Yeah, that awkward thing we try to fill every single second of. In Western cultures, we can't stand it. This number is wild. In a business negotiation, Americans can only handle about 4.6 seconds of silence before someone cracks. They just feel this overwhelming need to talk, and they usually end up giving away something important just to fill the quiet.
But here's the secret. The best listeners know that silence isn't a void. It's not dead air. It's an invitation. It's a space you create for the other person to think, to reflect, and often to reveal what really matters. There's a story about a top furniture salesman whose secret weapon was just to stay quiet after he showed a couple apiece. He let the silence do the work, and more often than not, they talk themselves into buying even more. Silence gives the other person's thoughts room to breathe. So as we start to bring this all together, what's the point? When you boil it all down, what does it truly mean to listen to someone? I think it really comes down to this beautiful idea from Henry David Thoreau. He said, "The greatest compliment that was ever paid me was when one asked me what I thought and attended to my answer." It's that simple, isn't it? To ask someone what they think and then actually pay attention to what they say. It's a profound act of respect, of interest, of love even. It is the most powerful and simple way to show another human being that they matter. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. The next time you're talking with someone, notice what you're waiting for. Are you just waiting for your turn to talk, for them to take a breath so you can jump in with your point? Or are you waiting patiently for your chance to truly listen? The choice and the connection that comes with it is all yours. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.